Hello and welcome to another episode of the Top Dogs podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. My name is Rob Doster, and we have another win to discuss, even though it was maybe a little bit more tense and difficult and stressful than a lot of fans probably would have wanted, considering that it was a 500 Providence team coming into Gamble Pavilion on Big NBC on a Sunday afternoon. It was a win. A win is a win is a win is a win. UConn was down by as many as 14 points in the second half and still found a way to be able to come back and get the victory. That is what ends up mattering. And it ends up being 8 straight wins. UConn is now sitting at 12-3, their first 4-0 start in Big East play in more than 20 years. And it is worrisome. That's kind of where I'm at with it. But let me say this before we dive into the meat of this podcast. I want to say that I'm actually really enjoying the way that this season is kind of playing out. And what I mean by that is the last 2 years, you went into a game expecting dominance. And if it wasn't dominance, then it was a problem, right? You go into every game expecting to win and expecting to come out with a victory. And look, I get it. It's fun. It was awesome. I enjoyed every single second of it. But there's part of me that really is having a good time watching matchups where you kind of have to figure out what they're going to do and watching UConn try to have to figure out a way to win. And it's not just we're going to go out there and do what we do and you're not going to be able to stop it, right? They have to make changes. They have to make tweaks. They have to make adjustments. They have to do some things differently. They have to find ways to be able to get creative and win. They have to mix match lineups. They have to give different guys a run out there. They have to give different players a look. They have to run different stuff offensively. They have to do different stuff defensively. And it's fun. It's different. It's probably not going to be the kind of thing that can get you in a position to win a national championship. Not if the defense is going to keep going this way, but it's certainly something where it is appointment television every single time they play. And it is fun for the fans. And it is something where you are going to be in dogfights. Like this Xavier game was one of the most fun fan experiences I've had in the last 3 or 4 years under this coaching staff. Butler blew a lead. It was still fun down the stretch. You got some huge shots from Alex Caravan to go get that win. Providence was, or I'm sorry, DePaul was nothing but worrisome, especially because McNeely went down with the ankle injury. But like the Providence, like the game today, the comeback, the stops that they got, the different looks you had to give, the fact that it felt like every single possession was live or die, like that's the kind of stuff that makes the sport great and makes the sport so much fun. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, man. And I'll tell you what, there are some guys that grew up tonight in this win, and we'll get into that in a second. But it was quite enjoyable for me, and this season has been quite enjoyable, despite the fact that it is not quite going as well as the last couple of years. And it feels weird saying that, but I really am thoroughly enjoying the growth and the process and the way that this team has come together. So let's talk about this game specifically. Before we do, please rate, review, subscribe to this podcast anywhere that you listen to podcasts. All of that engagement really does help, I promise you. And in this era of content creation, engagement matters, the algorithm matters, and engagement impacts the algorithm. So a like, a share, a review, all of that stuff really would help, and I really would appreciate every single one of you that does it. Let's start with what Providence did defensively, because I think that was a really interesting part of this matchup, and it plays into something a little bit bigger than we're going to talk about here in a second. But this was a completely different look on both ends from DePaul, but it was completely different on the defensive end. What they did on the perimeter, essentially, if there was any kind of guard to guard or wing to wing action, anything involving 1 through 4, they were switching, they were top locking, which means they get on above the guy trying to run off the screen and make it so you have to go under the screen as the guy offensively. They were overplaying on the wings. They basically said, we are going to completely sell out and not let you run any of all that like fancy shit that you like to run. You're not going to get those pin downs. You're not going to get these double screens. You're not going to be able to go out and run the UConn offense that they've made famous. And to protect against the back doors and to protect against guys slipping to the rim, they basically said, we're not going to guard Terrace Reed or Samson Johnson on the perimeter. We're just going to put our big guy, Oswin. Oswin, I'm sorry, man. I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name, but Oswin right in front of the rim, and you're not going to be able to finish over him. And what that basically turned into was the first half, it got really clunky offensively, and it took a while for UConn to figure out how they were going to find a way to attack this. And the way to attack it was pretty simple, right? You get into a middle ball screen with the Sandiara and the five, and you just run them down the lane. And since they're going to go over the screens, which means they're going to trail Sandiara, you end up in a situation where it's 2-on-1 with a drop coverage at the rim. And it was really effective once they kind of got into that mode where it's like, all right, all we're doing is running ball screens here because we're not going to get this other stuff. And you got lobs, and you got tip ins, and you got a Sandiara able to kind of get in the lane and create. And that's part of why he had the assists that he did and the scoring that he did. Like, they basically said, we're going to live. What Providence basically said is, we're going to live and die with Hassan Diarra ball screens being what tries to beat us instead of having you get put into offensive sets. And it almost worked. It almost worked. It was a smart game plan. It was a sharp game plan. I thought that Providence had the pieces to be able to execute it. I would say that it's not all that similar. To be frank, it's not all that dissimilar from what Creighton did last year when UConn played at Creighton and they lost. Right? It's not all that dissimilar from what they were trying to do and what they were trying to run. So I think Creighton is another team that could be able to run something similar to this. I'd be curious to see if Georgetown did this because they have Sorber in the middle. I think it's a little risky with Sorber, but you're not going to see it from St. John's. You're probably not going to see it from You're definitely not going to see it from Marquette. I don't think Villanova necessarily has the pieces to be able to run this the way that you need to be able to run it. So it's not something that you're going to see all that often, but Providence had the pieces to be able to do it. And for the first 25 minutes, they executed it really, really well before UConn kind of figured out a way to be able to beat it. And credit to Hassan Diar and Aiden Mahaney. And I'll talk about him more here in a second about the importance of it. Offensively, what Providence did was, again, the total opposite of what happened in the DePaul game. Like, against DePaul, UConn tried to switch everything and tried to really pressure out on the perimeter and just take away threes. And they kind of did to DePaul what Providence did to UConn today. And that's because DePaul's runs a little bit of an elaborate spread, try to pace you, try to space you out and knock down threes, kind of an offense. That's not what Providence is doing. Providence is putting you on an island, identifying a mismatch and trying to attack that mismatch, setting some screens, try to create switches, try to get into a situation where you can attack a mismatch, go one-on-one. It's a very NBA style. Kim English obviously comes from played in the NBA, has that kind of a mindset when it comes to putting together the offense that they run. And again, it worked for a while because what they did is they sat there and they picked on Alex Caravan over and over and over again. And it's not the first time that we've seen a Providence team. It's not the first time that we've seen Kim English find a way to be able to pick on Alex Caravan over and over and over again. I specifically remember during that really bad January, back in January of 2023, I think Bryce Hopkins had 27 and 12 in a win at the dunk, where he just kind of it was the first time that we really saw a team be able to put Alex Caravan on an island and take advantage of him. And the thing that was a little bit worrisome in this matchup was that this wasn't just like one guy. This wasn't just saying, all right, we're going to give the ball to Bryce Hopkins and he's going to beat Alex Caravan. It was Wesley Cardette got him. Rich Barron went by him a couple times. Jaden Pierre got isolated on him a couple times. There was Corey Floyd put the ball on the floor, got to them. I think Ryan Mealy even got him one or two times. And it was concerning to say the least, in terms of what Caravan was defensively. And he still got 4 blocks. And I also think, like, in the last 8 or 9 minutes, he actually made a couple of plays that were really, really big and got a couple of really, really big stops. But that is something that felt like a little bit of a regression. And he's got to start moving his feet better. He's got to get stronger. I'll be honest, I think that was a little bit more of an isolated outlier kind of performance for Caravan, because he has been much, much better than that defensively this season. He's been better than that defensively pretty much since his freshman year. I think that he had a bad game. That's what I'm going to chalk it up to. And, sometimes guys miss shots. There's also sometimes when guys just can't find a way to get a stop. So I'm going to chalk it up to that. And it's concerning, and it's something that has to be worked on, but I think that it will get worked on. And I don't think that this is quite to this level going to be something that we see all season long. But the defensive rebounding, there was a lot of issues. It was a toughness thing, right? Like I was texting with some people and messaging with some people during the game, and they were like, "Well, what can you switch? What can you do this? What can you do that? Like, can you give them a different look? Can you put Caravan at the five? Can you do these different things? Do you want to play Sampson and Terrace together?" And to me, I don't think that it was any of that, right? Like you had to. It was not a scheme thing. The issue that UConn had defensively in the first, probably let's call it the 28 minutes of that game, till about the 12-minute mark of the second half. It wasn't a scheme problem. It was a toughness. It was a physicality. It was right here. It was this, right? And they found a way to be able to get it done in the second half. And that's the thing that I found so promising about this, right? Like everybody once in a while is going to get your ass kicked. UConn got their ass kicked in Memphis, against Memphis in Maui in that first game, and it torpedoed that entire trip, that entire week, and they couldn't bounce back from it. And then against Baylor, right? They were down by 10, 12, something like that in the first half. And they found a way to bounce back. They dug deep and they got an answer there, right? Against Providence, they were down by 14 and they were playing like shit. Honestly, that first half, the second half of that first half was probably the worst that I've seen UConn play since this title run started. I really think that it was that bad. It was worse than anything that we saw in Dayton because it was at home, because it was Providence, because Providence was a 500 team coming in, because they didn't have Bryce Howard, for all of those reasons. Worst they've played since the season start, or since this run started. And they found a way to be able to get it right. And that's a championship response. That is the kind of response you would expect from a veteran team and a veteran program that has winners on it. But it's also something where you probably don't want to be in that situation if you are a serious contender for a national title. And what I mean by that is if you are clearly going to be let's just call it a top two seed in the tournament, right? I don't think that you necessarily see an Auburn or a Duke or a Tennessee or in this season, like an Iowa State. I don't think you see teams like that get themselves in those situations at home against overmatched teams because of effort issues and toughness issues. And that was a little bit of a red flag to me. I thought that it changed in the second half, and you have to give them credit for that. They got the win. They dug deep. They did what they had to do to win that basketball game. But it's going to be hard for me to kind of forget that start and say that we're never going to see that again because we've absolutely seen that before. Now, two guys I think deserve an utterly immense amount of credit outside of the obvious, right? Like Asan Diarra was awesome, right? Like he is kind of limited in who he is as a player in the sense that I think it was a smart game plan to say we're going to try to let Asan Diarra beat us in ball screens. That's not what he does best. He is a facilitator. He is a point of attack guy defensively, and he is kind of a lead by example guy. And that's fine. Like there's nothing that's not a criticism. It's just he's not Tristan Newton. They're different basketball players, and that is perfectly okay. Um, I thought that he was terrific in this game, and made all of the big plays that they needed him to make late. I thought Solo Ball hit a couple of massive shots. Like the dude is just so lethal when he's able to get any kind of space and any kind of glimpse of the rim. I thought he was really good again. Getting better defensively, still not where he needs to be defensively, but he is getting better. He is getting closer to a finished product. You can see some of the reads happen a little bit quicker. He still is, for somebody that is as athletic as he is, I wish that he was a little bit stronger. I think he looks like the kind of guy that probably has like a higher center of gravity, and the fact that he has a 6'10" wingspan and can jump the way that he can jump, um, it's a little bit easy to overlook the fact that he's probably what, like 6'2", a buck 85. So he's the size of a small NBA point guard. It's just to put that into context, and being asked to kind of play two, sometimes have to even play the three on this team. So he's a smaller guard, which is part of the reason why you run into some of these issues on the defensive end of the floor. But I thought that he got better today, and made some huge shots, man. Like when early in that second half, when UConn started to clicking on the offensive end, and they just couldn't get a stop. Jaden Pierre had like a layup where that went in when he was falling over. And then I think it was Rich Barron hit like a ridiculous fadeaway, and then Pierre hit like a 24-foot three. And every time Providence made one of those big buckets, UConn stepped up and hit a shot when it could have. It felt like that thing could have spiraled, right? It felt like when Providence had that run early in the second half when they were already up double digits, like once if they got one stop, it could have completely changed what this game was, and they weren't able to get it. And a large part of that was solo ball. I thought he was terrific, and for all the issues that Caravan had uh, defensively, I thought that the stuff that he did offensively was really important. He set good screens. He was able to space the floor. He didn't turn the ball over. He had a couple of important passes. Um, he had one really, really wide open three that would have brought the house down. I think it was 60-56, and he had that three from the wing in transition. But he missed it. But it was, I thought offensively, there was a calming sensation when he was on the floor. But for me, the two most important players of the game came off the bench. It was Terrace Reed and Aiden Mahaney. Terrace Reed, we'll get to Aiden in a second because it's a little bit of a longer conversation. But Terrace came in, started cleaning up the defensive glass, provided a level of physicality in the paint. There was a block in there that was really important during from about the 12-minute mark of the second half to I want to say about the 4-minute mark of the second half. UConn went on a 26-5 run. There was a 12-minute stretch where they only gave up one field goal, and that a lot of that had to do with like Terrace Reed coming into the game and just setting a standard for toughness and being big and strong and a friggin' bear in there. And I thought that was really, really important, and it set a tone. Um, I've heard there have been questions about whether or not Terrace Reed should be in the starting lineup at this point, right? And Dan has kind of alluded to it in some press conferences and publicly, but I think what's really important to note is that you need both of those guys. You need them both to be what they were tonight. And this was more of a Terrace Reed game. There are going to be nights where you have more of a Samson Johnson game. And I do think that the leadership that Sampson can provide, there's a level, I think he has a presence in that locker room and on that roster and on that team that is important to kind of the way that that thing works. And leaving him in the starting lineup for that reason, I think, is why. And also, like he's just so good ball. Like you can run those lobs to get the game going on that foot very, very easily. So I don't hate having Samson Johnson in the starting line, but they're both going to play about 20 minutes regardless of who starts. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And I thought Terrace Reed's presence, the stuff that he did in the post, the toughness that he provided, the pressure release when he was able to get a switch or get a seal, like all of that stuff was really, really important. And he changed the game when he came in the second half with about 11 minutes left. But to me, Aiden Mahaney won that game. UConn does not win that game if he's not on the floor for a couple of different reasons. One, like he had some really big shots. He made some free throws down the stretch. But there were two things that stood out specifically with the way that Providence was defending with all of the switches. They were basically daring UConn to try to beat them one on one. And I've said it a bunch of times, but one of the big knocks on the way that this roster was constructed is that they kind of bet it all on Mahaney being the one guy that could go out and create on his own. Um, and obviously, without having Liam McNeely out there, who's a little bit of a pressure release because of his size, but without having him out there as a secondary facilitator next to Diarra, you're kind of limited in that sense, right? Like solo ball is not a guy that's gonna bring the ball, like dribble off the bounce, put him in a ball screen and let him go kind of create something, right? That's not what he does. Alex Caravan, that's not what he does. Like those guys are really good players and really good pieces and incredible at their jobs, but that's just not what they do, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a criticism, but it's not what they do. And Aiden Mahaney is a guy that can beat you off the bounce and make a play. He had a huge bucket in the second half. I think it was 60-56, and it was the end of a shot clock. And he's going up against, I think it was Wesley Cardette, who is 6'5" and more athletic than him. And he's able to kind of get in the lane and get to his left hand and create a little space. And he threw up a little bank shot with his left hand like this that went in. That was a huge bucket that UConn had to have. Knocked down a big three to extend the lead. And it was Not a great performance defensively, but I would say it was his best performance defensively. Like, he's never going to be a great defender. And I don't think you need him to be, but he's never going to be a great defender. What you need to ask out of him is to keep fighting, right? You get beat, come back on the next possession and play like that possession it will determine the national championship. Don't let one mistake get in your head and compile, right? You got to get on to the next play. You got to be able to move past getting beat off the dribble. You got to be able to move past missing a rotation. You got to be able to move past missing a jump shot. And, I said this after the DePaul game, and I still think it's true. And I think we saw some of the benefits of it today is that without McNeely out there, Aiden is going to have to play extended minutes, right? There was a little bit of a stretch in December where he makes a mistake and he's out, right? You come in, you're playing for 2 minutes. You're giving Liam a blow. You're giving Hassan a blow. You're giving a solo ball a chance to get a blow on the bench. And, um, and if you make a mistake, you're coming right back out of the game. And uh, that it's very hard to kind of get in a rhythm. And I think what we saw today is Aiden get in a rhythm, develop some confidence, develop some belief, and see the fruits of his effort and the fruits of his labor, right? Both ends. Like, he created a turnover by staying in front of I think it was Bensley Joseph, and then on the next possession, I can't remember who it was, tried to drive baseline on him. I think it was Richie Mailer. Gave him a little chicken wing, probably flopped, drew the flop, like did everything you need to do to be able to draw that offensive foul, and was able to force a turnover there. And it was a really important defensive performance for him. It was important for UConn. And frankly, like it kind of changes a little bit, I think, what the ceiling of this group can be when McNeely gets back, because it takes a little bit that extra little bit of pressure off. Like, if you know that you can get that like those 20 minutes from Aiden Mahaney, you don't have to roll out Hassan DR for 38 minutes once McNeely gets back. You don't have to give McNeely 38 minutes once he gets back. Like, you can kind of give those guys a little bit more of a breather. And I think that's part of. So we talked about the killer instinct last week, right? And my theory was part of the reason they had that problem is because they don't really have any depth, effective depth on the perimeter. Jaden Ross was he got the start today and he was not good enough. He played 11 minutes. Jalen Stewart is still a little bit inconsistent. Like, he does some good things, he does some bad things. I still think that there is a potential NBA player in there. Same thing with Jaden Ross, but they're a little bit further away than I thought they would be at this point of their sophomore season. So we'll see how much that can kind of develop. But both those guys, I think, are really good players with really high ceilings that have not quite put it together yet. Aiden looks like the one that's kind of taking advantage of this opportunity, and they need him, man. They need him to be able to be that level of impact guy, because if you're playing Liam 38 minutes a night, eventually his legs are going to get. He's a freshman. Eventually, he's going to start wearing on him, right? Same thing with Hassan, and eventually, you're just going to give up some of those runs. And I think being able to have depth where, like, I just think that you're better off having Hassan DR play 30 minutes, Liam McNeely play 30 minutes, and Aiden Mahaney play 20 minutes, instead of having Hassan and Liam both play 37 minutes and Aiden Mahaney get 6 minutes. I feel like that's going to be something that's more uh, conducive to not having a drop off and being able to get a lead and hold a lead and extend a lead. So really, really important minutes from Aiden Mahaney there. And I thought that it's something that is a great sign for UConn moving forward. And it's just on a personal note, like, it's nice to see him have success, right? It can't be easy for him when the people that visited UConn, the transfers that visited UConn, the guys that UConn took Aiden Mahaney over, and the success some of those other guys are having. One of them happens to be the best three-point shooter in all of college basketball and the second best three-point shooter considering strength of opponent since Doug McDermott, right? It can't be easy seeing some of these other players have a certain level of success that he has not been able to have when that was the expectation on him coming in. And I know he beats himself up about it. And I know that it's something that weighs on him. And it's nice to see him have that success. So happy for the kid, happy for the program, happy for myself because I didn't want to have to deal with Providence fans on social media apps if they happen to find a way to win that game. And happy to head on to the next game with a 8-game winning streak, 12-3 record, 4-0 mark in the Big East. Next game up is going to be Villanova, which is just like they're a weird team, man. Like it's a weird situation. Last year, uh, they were one of the best defenses in college basketball, and they couldn't score to save their life. And they went, 17 of 14, 500 in the Big East with all of this really impressive high level transfer talent. This year, they went into the portal again, didn't quite get guys that are the same level, have managed to put together an offense that's even better than UConn's and a defense that's even worse than UConn's, right? Well, their offense isn't better, but an offense that's as good as UConn's and a defense that's even worse than UConn's. Wooga Poplar has been a game changer. Jameer Brickus is really good offensively. Eric Dixon there's an argument to be made that he's the best player in college basketball, not named Janai Broome. He is the leading scorer in college basketball. I have no idea how UConn is going to guard him. I don't think you want to put Alex Caravan on him based on the way that the last game went. I don't know if Samson Johnson or Terrace Reed are guys that you want chasing this dude out on the perimeter. Like he is actually a legit dangerous three-point shooter. He shoots 7 of them a game, makes them at a 49% clip. They run him off of pin downs. They run him off of flare screens. They run him off of the same actions that you see solo ball running off of. And Eric Dixon is 6'8", 265 pounds. Like I understand that Villanova has not necessarily had the last couple of seasons that you would expect out of a Villanova program. But let's not pretend that Eric Dixon isn't one of the best players in all of college basketball. And I think UConn fans are smart enough to understand that he is great. He is fun to watch. And I really do appreciate kind of having him around the college basketball ranks, man. He's a fun player. I think he's going to play in the NBA too. So I don't know how UConn stops him. That's the place that you got to start. You got to find a way to be able to slow him down. If you could slow down Eric Dixon, you have a chance to be able to run away with this thing and be able to win this game without too much of a stretch. I believe it is going to be played at the Finn at Finneran Pavilion. So you know it's going to be packed. You know it's going to be loud. You know it's going to be hot in there. Obviously, Finneran is kind of their version of Gamble. It's not quite as big, but it's the same kind of thing where you get a much better home court environment when you are playing in that building than you do when you're playing in the Wells Fargo Center because it's not on campus. It's downtown Philadelphia. It is much bigger and much more difficult to sell out. So, yeah, UConn puts an 8-game winning streak on the line in a early tip, a 6:30 tip, Finneran Pavilion, Villanova Wildcats. So that should be a fun one. Bet the over. No one's going to play a lick of defense in that game. So hopefully we'll be able to have a podcast on Wednesday night talking about what I think we all want is a UConn win in that game. So until then, appreciate everybody listening. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Roll skis. If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 throughout the year. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. The best part, all you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your own hard-earned money to be eligible. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. BetMGM is going to have some fun offers available throughout the NBA playoffs. Bet insurance tokens, odds boost, and what I love, a nice parlay boost or two from time to time, as well as a ridiculous array of player prop bets for any sport that you could possibly imagine betting on. BetMGM is and always will be the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app, use the bonus code FIELD, and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content that you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the podcast. Like and share the YouTube videos. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show. Now that the college basketball season is in full swing, you need to make sure that you have access to the best betting tool on the market, the Rhythm app. Spelled RITHMM, is a data-backed app that uses AI and analytics to identify inefficiencies in betting lines and the player prop market that will allow you, the user, to profit. You can create customized, analytics-driven betting models tailored to your personal preferences as a bettor. Users have access to up-to-the-second against-the-spread data. And if you're like me and you understand pictures better than numbers on a screen, Rhythm's internal trend analysis provides you with the kind of graphs that will allow you to evaluate past results and project future performance in a visual way. Every Division I college basketball team is included in the Rhythm's metrics. Free subscribers to the Field of 68 Daily will get 25% off for a Rhythm subscription. Use the QR code on the screen to sign up or download at the link in the description. Back to the Field of 68 After Dark here, Sunday night edition. Rob Doster, Tyler Hansborough, Terrence Oglesby. We just spent about the first 30 minutes of the show breaking down the Big Ten, everything you need to know about the Big Ten. The nicest things you're ever going to hear about Illinois basketball here on the Field of 68. UConn down by 13, TO, in the first half against Providence, put up a 60 spot in the second half. They still have not figured out how to be able to stop anybody, stop dribble penetration, keep people from being able to get to the rim. Where do you stand on UConn now, big picture? Obviously, they've won 8 in a row since they got back from Maui, got a couple of decent wins in that run, a couple of performances where maybe it wasn't as impressive as it should have been.
Win's a win. Win's a win. I know Providence was about to be lit on fire if that would have happened, but it didn't happen. I thought Providence played really well as they possibly could have played. But I thought what ended up happening was UConn kind of exerted their physicality after Providence threw their best shot at him. And it was a really tough best shot. But then UConn kind of started rolling because their physicality lasts for that full 40 minutes, where I think Providence has some of that in them. It just hasn't been that consistent this season. So I think there's a wearing effect when you play UConn because they're going to continue doing their thing. If I'm Alex Caravan, though, I better start sliding them puppies because I think a lot of people watching this game, especially opposing teams, they're going to be watching to see what did Providence do to exploit Connecticut a little bit. And I think that dribble drive right away, getting the right matchup, you're going to have to stay down and contest or do something to keep your balance because it was tough. And, credit to Providence. They gave their all, played 8 guys, significant minutes. Just didn't have enough. Just didn't have enough to finish it out.
Tyler?
Well, congrats to Providence for keeping it close, but where I stand on UConn is a contender. I don't question this. You take away the trip from to Maui and what they've done post that and before that, UConn to me, I just believe in Dan Hurley. I think he's going to have his team playing defense. They're going to figure it out. They're also more of a veteran team. I do like the kid Samson Johnson. I think that he can be a rim protector. He's an athletic big. He can pick and roll, and he is a lob threat. And Caravan, even though you guys are a little critical of his defense, he is a big guard. He can knock down shots. And the Reed kid coming off the bench. Now, I really like his game. I think he's kind of old school. He will duck in. He will give you right hooks. He will score around the basket. And I'm a big fan of UConn.
I think Terrace Reed, I thought his impact today, Rob, was so much bigger than his stat line indicated. Like, he's just everywhere. He brought a certain amount of physicality that I don't think Samson Johnson's quite capable of. Like, you bring Terrace Reed in there, that's like older brother on the block. Like, you got to come out there, and he's going to bring a certain type of play, a certain type of physicality. He's going to punch you in the mouth, and he's going to board. He's going to finish around the rim. Like, he brings a certain mentality with that second unit. I've kind of been curious as to why Samson Johnson's still in the starting lineup, to be honest with you. I like him, sure, but Terrace Reed just brings so much to that team. But I guess he's that second jolt of energy after that first media timeout. But where am I with UConn? I think they win a couple games in the tournament. Do I think they win a third national championship in a row? I don't think that's going to be the case, but I do think this is a really good team, and it's going to be a fun watch for the rest of the season. I almost feel weird because when I say they're not going to win a national championship, I almost feel like I'm slighting them. And that is the greatest compliment that you can give a program and its staff. Is I don't think that I feel guilty for saying I don't think they can win a third national championship in a row. I do think they're very good. And I think they can make a second weekend. That's kind of where I'm at with UConn so far.
Yeah, I think it's the points about Terrace Reed I think are really important as far as why Sampson's still starting. There's a leadership thing there that within that locker room that he kind of brings that I think is a dynamic that the staff likes. What I will say is this: Liam McNeely did not play in this game. He's got the ankle injury. He's expected to be out for, I think it's they said weeks. They're hoping for the end of January. I think that pushing for the Creighton game on January 18th is probably a little bit too optimistic, but we'll see. It's high ankle sprains, man. You never really know how long those things take. I thought Aiden Mahaney's performance off the bench today was so important for what UConn can be long-term and big picture, right? What Providence did on the defensive end was they overplayed everything on the wings. They switched every screen. They top locked. They did everything that they could to take away any kind of offensive set that UConn would run, and then they did not guard UConn's 5 at the top of the key, left their big in front of the rim to take away any back cuts. So they said, you're not going this way over the screen, and if you cut back door, we got 7-foot Oswin, however you say his last name, standing there in front of the bucket. Good luck trying to finish over him.
And that with UConn, with UConn too, their point guard comes back and gets the ball on every freaking set they have. It's a bunch of wash until the point guard comes back and gets it. It's been like that for 3 years.
Yep.
They get creative. There's a lot of slips. They get creative. The point guard's always coming back to get the ball. Sorry, Rob. Go ahead with your.
It's an important point because Asan Diarra is not a guy. I know he had 19 and 8 tonight, right? But he's not a guy that you want being. Yeah, but in an ideal role, he's more of a facilitator than he is the guy that you have isolating, trying to create off the bounce. He's not his best skill is not as a scorer. Aiden Mahaney's best skill is as a scorer. And I thought that his ability to come in and create offense when Providence is basically saying, you're going to have to beat us one-on-one with your guards, and that's how you're going to have to win this game. Mahaney had 15 points off the bench. I think he scored 12 of them in the second half. And most importantly, there was a level of fight from him defensively that I don't think we've seen yet this season. Like he's had a rough beginning of the year. He's not a great defender. And I think the fact that he's not a great defender has it's almost like a mental thing for him at this point. He knows that he's being targeted by opposing offenses, and it's if he gets beat off the dribble once, like he's not going to fight on that next possession. Tonight he did. I think that's really impressive. I think it's really important for them long term, and I think he needed a shout out for that one. Tyler, with UConn, like they remind me a little bit of Alabama last year, where you're going to get points of them as long as they have like a 10-minute stretch where they actually can get some stops. I think that's what's going to end up being the difference maker for them. I'm still not convinced that can happen, but I mean, they did it today.